Well, thank you very much. I'm not Marty tonight. I'm Rob. That scene that you just saw, you know, many people know that the whole movie, all the dialogue is improvised. So everything we did there was improvised. Now we knew we were going to do a scene about an amp that went up to 11 because we made the prop and everything. But what makes that work to me is that we didn't know how we were going to talk about it, and I completely threw Chris, who plays Nigel, when I said, "Well, why don't you make that a little loud? Make that the top number," and the pause that he takes. That's what makes it work because he didn't have an answer. And so that I love I like when I can pin him into a corner and then he comes up with his best stuff.
And you say in the book that, and I love this, that reminds you of when your dad was with Mel Brooks.
That's right. That's right. For those of you who don't know, my father used to do. Yep. Yeah, he did. He did a routine with Mel Brooks called "The 2,000-Year-Old Man," and it's a great. And if you haven't heard the albums, they're incredible. To me, they're the funniest comedy albums ever done. And my dad always said that when he would pin Mel into a corner, paint him into a corner, Mel would come up with his best stuff. So he would always find a way to push Mel into a place, and Mel would then freeze, and then craziness would come out. And that made it work. So I took that page from him. And I felt really good one time. I was 16 years old. And I listened. I listened to those albums every day. I would come home from school, put it on the record, and listen to it. And because it's the funniest album. And I always knew that if I met anybody who could quote lines from that album, that meant I could connect with them. That meant I could be their friend. And people have that same thing with Spinal Tap. They find lines that they like "This Goes to 11," or find line between stupid and clever. And so they can connect. But I'm 16 years old, and my dad and Mel Brooks are working on a routine that they're going to go either do on the Ed Sullivan Show or the Hollywood Palace, one of their performances. And I came up with an idea for a joke. And I thought, oh, Jesus, can I tell them? I mean, I went downstairs, and they're sitting in the living room, and I said, I think I have an idea for a joke that could work. And they said, well, what is it? And I said, well, it's about the derivation of applause. And they said, what? And then I act out, and I got to stand up for this, and you got to stand up to it.
All right, I'm in.
Mike, because
I'm in. Improvising with Rob Reiner. I love it.
You got to hold this. I can't.
Oh, that's my whole role.
And then you can put it in front of me because otherwise, here we go. There we go. Huh. He's a professional. He's done this.
I'm learning.
Anytime.
Learning.
Yeah, learn. Anyway, so I said, well, it's when you saw somebody you like, you'd go, oh, boy, is that good. Wow. And if you love the person, you could kill yourself. And he said, Murray was the first guy when nobody was looking. He pulled his head out, and he brought it down like this. And that was the derivation of, and they used the joke. They used it. And it was like the greatest thing in the world. See, you had to do.
Wait a minute. So that was the first joke you wrote that went on to?
Well, that went on television. When I was 21, I wrote for the Smothers Brothers.
You wrote the first?
Yeah. And I worked with Steve Martin. Steve Martin and I were the two youngest on the show in 1968 and 69. And I'm very proud of the fact that we wrote the first fart joke that was ever done on national television. Yeah, there was Pat Paulson, who was on the show. He came out and he was the president of the Acme Novelty Company. And they made all these the thing where your fingers get stuck in the thing, and the pucker gum and the dribble glass and all these weird little, trick, and the gum that snapped on your finger. And he says, at one point he's demonstrating, he sits down and you hear a, like this. He said, somebody slipped a whoopee cushion in when I wasn't looking. He got up, there was nothing there. That was the first part.
I believe you, but how do you know that it was the first fart joke to ever air on TV?
Because you tell me another one. Tom Smothers used to fight all the time to get, material on it. It was censorship like crazy. I mean, we're having it now too, but it was bad in those days. Yeah, no, I know it's bad, but hopefully we'll get past this. I'm hoping that we will.
It can't.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the movie? Because we've got 750 people who, as you mentioned, can quote every line.
Yeah, let's talk about the movie and the book. And let me show you something about the book.
Yeah.
The book that just came out. It's it's called Fine Line Between Stupid and Clever, which is my favorite line in the first film. And you see, it's the making of the first film and the second film, and it's written by me, Rob Reiner, along with Chris, Harry, and Michael. Now you read the back, you read about the making of the film. Blah, 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 blah. You finish that part of the book, then you turn it over and smell the book is the other side. And this is about the history of the band, and it's by Marty DeBerge and Nigel and David and Derek, and it's an interview. I interview them in character, so you get two.
Can I say, with the fine line between stupid and clever, that one of the reasons why I believe you love it is because it's not just one person saying the line.
That's exactly right. The thing that we found amongst the four of us that we can, as Chris Guest calls schnadeling, he said we can all do shtick with each other. We can go back and forth, and like jazz musicians, you know when to lay out, know when to come in, and you kind of feel each other. So there's a scene in the film where they're all upset because they won't release Smell the Glove because it's a sexist cover. It's got a woman on all fours with a man shoving a glove in her face and everything, and they won't release the album. Now they run into a guy in the lobby of a hotel, another rock star named Duke Fame, and they said, he leaves, and he says, well, wait a minute, how come they released his album? His album, he's naked, he's on a table, and there's these women whipping him like this. And the manager says, well, you see, the difference is he's the victim. See, in your thing, she was the victim. It's okay if he's the victim. And then they said, oh, yeah, well, I guess there's a fine line between stupid and then Harry off stage says, and clever. And I just love that they can, they dovetail with each other and they make a joke that works. Even though the punchline is off camera, it still worked.
When you get a moment like that and you shot hundreds of hours of footage, which I'd love to see, do you know at that moment that's a keeper?
You don't know, because it like you say, we shot hundreds and hundreds of hours, and there are scenes that we spent a lot of time with that all of a sudden it took too long to make the joke work. And you have to have a rhythm to things. It has to run smoothly. And I learned something very interesting, because it's a fake documentary, but it's made like a real documentary. We shot it, like I say, improvised, everything. And what you find is that you start to write the movie in the cutting room with the pieces of film. And what I discovered, and the editor taught me this, is it's not getting the images to flow, it's getting the dialogue to flow. If you can string together a conversation that sounds like it's happening at one time, you can cut to anything, even if the person's off camera, as long as the sound, if it's off, will jar you more than the picture. So we had to do a lot of that kind of stuff, and it meant cutting tons and tons of scenes. The first assembly was 4 hours long with 3 hours of interview footage that I hadn't even put in. So I had 7 hours in the first, it was like forever. We had a scene that was, and it kills me every time I see it. It gets a laugh. I never knew why it got a laugh, but it always does. There's a scene where they're, again, finding out that they're not going to release Smell the Glove. And they said, why? What's wrong with being sexy? He says, no, it's sexist. Sexist. And there's a shot where you see Nigel with a little cold sore on his lip. And the camera pans over, and there's Michael. David with a coleslaw. They both have coleslaw. Okay, so that's the remnants of this joke that we came up with. At one point, we had a band, a punk band called The Dose, that was opening for Spinal Tap. And the front singer was a girl named Sherry Curie, who was the lead singer in The Runaways with Joan Jett and a few bit. And so they were on, and we see them there rehearsing, and then we see Nigel kind of canoodling with Sherry, and the next scene, he's got the coleslaw like this. The next scene, she's now with David, Michael McCain. And then the next scene, he's got the coleslaw. And then she makes it around the round band, and then there's a meeting. There are 5 of them sitting around. 4 of them have coleslaws, and they're deciding, we're going to drop the Dose from the tour. We have to drop. And the drummer, the only one without the coleslaw, says, no, I like them. I think we should keep them. And it just took so long to tell that story that we cut that whole thing. And all that's left is 2 people with coleslaws. We never explain it, but for some reason, people laugh. I don't know why.
But that is so great that there's actually a herpes backstory.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there's a real reason for it.
There's another scene you cut, and we got to bring it up because we're in Chicago, where one of the actors did a whole discourse on Fergie Jenkins's career.
Yes. There's a scene where that we had where Paul Schaefer, who plays Artie Fufkin, the manager, the guy was trying to sell the albums, and he says, listen, guys, I gotta book you. I mean, you got to go on this radio program. It's very early in the morning. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning for rockers. This is impossible. He says, no, but we need it. It's a rock station, and you got to come. And that's the only way we're going to be able to sell the albums. Okay, they go. What they didn't know is that day, the day before, it went from a rock station to a sports talk station. And they're sitting there, these guys, and the first question comes in and says, how many games, complete games, did Ferguson Jenkins have for the Chicago Cubs? And you look at these guys, and the drummer says, well, Ferguson Jenkins has, and then he lists every stat that he has. He knew it for some reason. That we had to take that out too.
It's incredible.
I know. And we had a scene where Bruno Kirby, who's the limo driver, Tommy, he says he brings pizza to them at a hotel, and they get him high. They give him some weed, and they get him high. And then you see him. He next thing he's in his underwear. And you got a piece of pizza crust, and he's singing "My Way," into the pizza crust. And then at the end he just falls over. So we had, you got to keep the thing moving, and as they say, sometimes you have to kill your darlings.
Well, let's back up a little, and what I didn't know, I don't know if other people know, is that the movie was not the first time the members band showed up. They were
That's right.
So talk about the origin story.
Yeah, the origin. Well, I did a TV show in 1978, 79, and it was called The TV Show. And what it was I was sitting there in my den watching television, flipping from channel to channel with my remote, and we showed, sitcoms and commercials and telethons and just everything, just one thing after the next. One of the things we did was a satire of a late-night rock show called Midnight Special that was on at that time. Some people, remember it. And that was the first. I played Wolfman Jack, who was a DJ at the time, and I introduced Spinal Tap for the first time, and we saw them performing and doing kind of an MTV video kind of thing. It was kind of cheesy. And that was the first time we ever saw Spinal Tap. And they were funny, and, during the in-between takes, these guys started improvising in these British characters. And I said, geez, we got to find something else to do with these guys. It's really funny. So time went by. We finished the show. We went out.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
You can interrupt me anytime you want.
No. This is worth it. When you shot that video, something happened with something called with the bee something.
Oh yeah, bee.
That was something that would happen to the band.
Yeah, the bee smoker. Yeah. Well, we wanted to have a kind of an atmospheric look to the thing, and they had this thing called a bee smoker, which pumps smoke into the thing, but it went on the fritz, and hot oil just kept dripping on them. But they were pros. They hung in there, and they sacrificed for their art. Anyway, we finished the show. We go our separate ways, and Harry Shearer and I had an idea to do a movie about a rock and roll band on tour, told through the eyes of the roadies. You know, the guys who have to pack things up and ship to the next town and what their lives were like. We start writing a screenplay on spec, and all of a sudden we read about a movie that's going to come out called Roadie that stars Meatloaf. And I said, oh, forget it. We're not going to do it. At the same time, Chris and Michael started doing a kind of two British guys. They did a little video, two British guys who run into each other in a hotel, and they vaguely remembered that they played in the band with each other. And it was really funny. And I saw that, and I said, geez, let's all get together and instead of through the eyes of the roadies, we'll tell it through the eyes of the band. We all got together, and we had this idea that we were going to do it as a fake documentary. And I went to this guy who I knew ran a company called Marble Arch, which was by Sir Lou Grade owned it. And he was a guy that used to be at ABC. And I said, look, we got this idea. We want to do a satire of a rock and roll documentary. And he said, okay, I'll give you $60,000. You'll write a script. We went to write the script, the four of us, and we realized there was no way that we could communicate in script form what this was going to be, because it had to feel like a documentary. You can't write this stuff. So I went to the guy. I said, look, give me the $60,000. I'll make you some of the film. And he said, okay. I added $25,000, my own money. The guys chipped in $5,000. We had $90,000. We made 20 minutes of backstage footage, on-stage performance, interview stuff, cut it together, had the 20 minutes. I give it to the guy. He says, this stinks. I don't want this. Get this out of here. I don't want it. I said, oh, my God, that's it. Now we got this 20-minute thing. What are we going to do with it? And I thought, oh, God, we tried to see if we could get meetings at studios. We got turned down at every single studio we went to. And I told Karen Murphy, who was the producer on the movie, I said, Karen, if we ever get this made, we're going to have that great story that said we went from studio to studio carrying a 16-millimeter can of film under our arms, and we got turned down. And that's what happened. We got turned down everywhere. Finally, we hear that there's a movie they're making at Avco Embassy. It's like Take This Job and Shove. It's not that one. It was similar. And they're looking for a director. And this guy named Peter Turner, he's an agent at William Morris, wasn't my agent. I wasn't even with William Morris. He says to the woman who is trying to put the project together at Avco Embassy, name is Lindsay Durant, he says, what about Rob Reiner? And she said, Rob Reiner, well, what has he done? He hasn't done anything. He said, I saw this 20-minute thing. You should take a look. It's pretty good. So she takes a look, and she says, well, forget the movie that we're trying to, what are you doing with this? And I said, well, I'm trying to get it off the ground. Nobody will buy it. She says, listen, I think I can convince the guy who runs Avco Embassy. At the time, it was Frank Capra. Frank Capra II, Frank Capra's son, the great director. It was his son. She said, if I can convince him to distribute it, maybe you'll be able to get money. And that's the thing. If you can get a distributor, then it's easy to raise money. So I had that. I went to a guy. He gave me like $1 million to make the film. And I said, okay. I came back. I said, look, we got $1 million. We got a distributor. Let's go. And then the company gets sold. And it got sold to Jerry Franchio and Norman Lear. And I knew Norman Lear from that. But what happens when you get a new regime, they usually take anything that's in development and they scrap it, which is what they did. They just wiped the slate clean of anything, including my project. And so I went to Alan Horn, who was running the company at the time.
Wait a minute. Why did Norman Lear
wait?
I know.
Yeah.
But didn't he just, why, were you pissed at him?
No. I mean, I was in All in the Family, but I never directed anything. And and he's not looking at the 20. He's like listening to these executives who don't want to do this thing. They didn't know if it's going to be a hit. And by the way, it wasn't a hit right away. So anyway, he says, I go to Alan Horn, and Alan says, we decided we're going to just go with all new stuff. I said, Alan, please, just let me talk to Norman. Let me talk to Jerry. And let me just try to convince him. He said, okay, sets up a meeting. I go in there, and I'm with Jerry and Norman and Alan and all these other executives. Lindsay Duran was there too. And I go through this incredible, insane pitch. This is the best movie it's going to be. It's going to be this rock and roll. The kids love it. Repeat business. I went crazy. And I was just selling my ass off to try to get this. And then I left the room, and this is what I'm told happened after I left the room. Norman turns to Jerry and Alan and says, which one of you wants to tell him he can't do it? So I got to make it, and then we took it, we made it, and I don't know if you know, but you make a movie, and they have screenings, and they have cards. People fill out, cards, and what they think of it, and they rate it and all that. We had our first screening in Dallas, Texas, and I don't know if you know that. If you get 70, 80%, then you've gotten good. That means people saying it's good or excellent. We had like 40%. It's the worst cards ever. It was terrible. People came up to me and they said, I don't understand this. Why would you make a movie about a band nobody ever heard of? Make it about the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. And I felt terrible because they just didn't get it. They didn't get it. But I felt a little bit okay, and I felt a little bit that I've counted in the cards I read, I counted 5 ways that they spelt the word movie. Yeah. There was M-O-V-I-E, there was M-O-V-E-Y, there was M-O-V-Y, M-O-V-E-E, and my favorite, M-O-V-E. So I'm figuring maybe these people, they're not geniuses, and maybe it's okay. But it took a long time before people caught on to it and thought it was good. I mean, the guy who shot it is a guy named Peter Smokler. I hired him because he had shot all these rock and roll documentaries, and I thought, wow, he'll be perfect. We started shooting, and he says, I don't get it. What is this? He says, this it's not funny. This is exactly what they do. Yeah. I said, it's a little funny. Well,
how do you put it that it's close to the bone, but just skewed enough?
That's it. And satire, if you do it right, it is close to the bone. You want to make it so that it's subtle. And, there's a classic line that they say about Broadway theater. They say, satire is what closes on a Saturday night. I mean, people don't get it right away. But slowly, over the years, people started getting what we were doing. And the Library of Congress put it in the National Film Registry. The line you see there, it goes to 11. That made it into the Oxford English Dictionary. And so, this is a great thing. So if you go, I don't know if any of you have been to Stonehenge, but if you go there, it's true. If you go there, it's great. I mean, they have a learning center where people, they bring students and they teach them whatever they know about. But there's a big wall at Stonehenge, and on there are quotes from scientists and poets and writers and authors and all these brilliant philosophers and everything. And then there's a quote that says, "No one knows who they were or what they were doing." Nigel Tufnell, rock musician.
Which is probably the only accurate thing written on the...
Yes, no one knows who they were or what they were doing.
But wait a minute. I didn't know this. There's been tons of stories, and it's in the book too, of both rock stars who have had Spinal Tap moments. Black Sabbath, R.I.P. to Ozzy, had a song called Stonehenge and wanted to sue you guys.
Well, no, they didn't. Here's what's crazy.
I know.
They didn't want to sue us, but they were very mad because Black Sabbath was doing a tour, and this time Ozzy was not part of the tour. He was not doing solo stuff. But they had this idea to do a Stonehenge theme in their thing. And um, they started their tour, and a week later, or I think it was 2 weeks later, our movie comes out. And they got so mad because they said, they stole it from us. They were so dumb to realize, what did they think? We shot, we edited, and we put the movie together, got it into the theaters in 2 weeks. That's what they thought happened. It was a perfect rock and roll moment where they couldn't figure it out. But we had all kinds of things that were, mirrored what happened in real life. And, we lived in that world. We all lived in that rock and roll world. There was a real cross-pollination between the rock world and the improv world. I was coming out of improv, but, Janis Joplin would come on stage with us, and she was a much better singer than she was an improviser, but she was great. We had fun, and, so we knew all these tropes.
Laurel Canyon.
Yeah, we knew everything. I lived in Laurel Canyon during the 60s, and I was up in Haight-Ashbury in 67, Summer of Love, and I made love on acid. Yes, I did.
But more impressively, who made your bookshelves?
Who? Oh, well, my bookshelves. Yeah, well, there was a young guy who was a carpenter, not Jesus. There was a young actor who was a struggling actor who was making money as a carpenter. And I was living at the time, this is before I got married to Penny Marshall. I was living in Laurel Canyon with her, and we needed some bookshelves made. And this young guy who was a great carpenter came and made the bookshelves, and that was Harrison Ford. So he was a good bookshelf maker and a good actor.
Do you still have?
He made more money as an actor, I think.
One of the things that I loved about the book is that you share how not just were you immersed in the world of rock, but so many of the things that show up in the movie are things that happen to either you or other people. For example, tell the story, if you will, of Christopher Guest watching a Shakespeare in the Park production.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he's watched Shakespeare in the Park. If they've ever been there, it's outdoors, it's a beautiful night in Central Park in New York, and they have a production, and the actors are big, very good actors, and they're out there and they're doing their performance, and all of a sudden one act, they have all these mics on, so you can hear. And one night, something goes into the mic, and it's, I'm on here on Amsterdam Avenue, and I don't find it. I want to pick her up in front of the deli, and she's not. And something coming through the mics, and they try to tap it, and he says, "No, it's on 44th Street. I told you, 44th Street." And they go like this. And the actors started cracking up, and they couldn't get back to the, and that became the scene and another thing that came out of it is it came in the scene when they were in the army base, and he's got that radio mic that he shows about there, and he gets these cab signals and stuff like that. But that scene itself came from a guy who was in the 20-minute video. There was a guy named John Sinclair, who was the keyboard player. Really good keyboard player. He was a British guy, and we were ready to start shooting. And right before we started shooting, he got offered to be in a real rock band. It was a band called Uriah Heep, and they were touring with an album called Abominog, and they offered him to play keyboards and go on tour. He couldn't decide, what am I going to do? He figured, that's a real gig. These guys, I don't know what they're going to be. So he took that gig. And halfway through the tour, he came and hung out with us, and he visited. He said, "You won't believe it. We got booked into this weird gig. We was a military base." Okay, right in the movie. Goes right in the movie. Yeah.
But can I just say, speaking of the music, I think people are agree. The music is good.
Yeah. The music is good.
Like, I will sometimes be in the car and be like, I need to rock out. I'm putting on Spinal Tap.
We made it. It was important to us that the laughs didn't come from the music. The laughs came from the lyrics. That's where we got our laughs. In Big Bottom or in Sex Farm or whatever. That's where we would get the laughs, not in the music itself, because they're all good musicians. They all play really well, and they actually, would get mad at me. Even in the second film we just finished, they said, sometimes I'll cut around to show something on the dynamic shot I want, but I'll be on a point where they're playing something that's not what they played, and they'll say, nope, you can't do that. I'm not playing those notes. I'm not playing. And so we found a way so that every single thing you see is done live, and it is them playing. And they are very proud of that fact, because a lot of bands will go on tour, they play the tracks. They play to playbacks and things. These guys never did that. And that's why you've got a lot of good musicians wanting to play with them. I mean, in the second film, we had Elton John, who talks about how, he really wanted to come and play with them. He said, because they're not like a regular heavy metal band. He says, you don't find a heavy metal band with a guy who can play a mandolin in it, which Chris Guest is very good at mandolin. And, so Paul McCartney wanted to come and play because...
He's so funny, by the way.
Paul is very funny. And that came from, when you see the second one, it's out in the theaters now. If you see it, Paul, that really happened to Spinal Tap too. They were rehearsing for a tour in this big rehearsal complex in Los Angeles, and down the hall was Paul McCartney, also rehearsing for his tour. And at one point, he just drops in and says to the guys, hey, fellas, give us a tune. And that actually happened. And so they didn't know what to do. They did a folk version of Start Me Up. Yeah. And he got a real kick out of it. So he loves playing with them.
Speaking of filming the band while they're playing, the movie has some of the first crotch shots.
Yeah. It's obligatory. When you're doing heavy metal music, you have to. And the scene where he gets stopped at the metal detector, and and by the way, Harry is dogged about the fact that it's not a cucumber. It's a courgette. It's a zucchini. And that's what sets off the metal detector. When they started playing, the film spawned real tours. They played Wembley, they played Royal Albert Hall, they played Glastonbury and Carnegie Hall, and people would come, and were they part of the gag, or did they really but they would throw these zucchinis up on the stage and underwear and stuff like that.
It's unbelievable. I want to ask you, there's I don't know, it's not tension necessarily, but there was a discussion as the movie was being made about let's call it the Yoko Ono lot line, and whether that was true to satire. And you argued that there needs to be emotion.
Yeah.
It's something you also talk about in the book about The Princess Bride, how it was a satire of swashbuckling films, but it needed that emotion. So maybe this is a transition. We have about 10 minutes left to talk about everything else you've ever done. But talk about that, fine line between satire and...
It's important to me. I mean, listen, if satire and emotion, they don't like each other. They don't want to live together, because satire is about making fun and putting things down. Emotional can be soft and sweet, and they don't like to be with each other. But my feeling has always been, and if you can pull it off, it's hard, but I don't think the audience gets a full meal if they're just... They'll laugh, and that's good. We want them to laugh. But the thing that makes it feel satisfying is that there's also an emotional underpinning to things. So I always felt that there needed to be that in the first one and in the second one. And we drew from the relationship between Nigel and David, who've known each other since they're little boys and have become close friends, and they're like brothers. And like brothers, they fight sometimes, and there's tension and there's conflict. And I mind that a little bit in the first movie. We just touch on it. We don't get into it too heavily. The second movie, probably a little bit more, not too much more, because they're older, and those tensions and those difficulties that happen with people, they do get a little deeper and they get tougher. So I try to blend those. And Princess Bride was almost impossible because you're marrying satire. I mean, there's a movie that has never get involved in a land war in Asia. It is, and then it's also this story of true love and it's also about swashbuckling and action. So it's, as Bill Goldman used to say, it's an oddball movie. It's an oddball mix. But if you can find a way to blend those things together and then we're also cutting away to a grandfather telling the story to his grandson. So he just says you have to figure out a way to weave all that together. And if you can do it, I think it's more satisfying for the audience. I really do.
And in Princess Bride, the hat shows up.
Yes. Now, here was an interesting one. It's one of those, as they call, Easter eggs, you know. If you remember in Spinal Tap, I wore a hat that said USS Oral C, not Coral C, which is what it was, but the military wouldn't let us have it. So we Greeked the C and made it Oral C. And I'm doing the Princess Bride, and my friend Bobby Colombi, who was a drummer from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, he says, you know what would be great is Mark Knopfler to do the score. And Mark Knopfler, you know, from Dire Straits, he, great guitarist, he had done a couple of scores, very small films, and he said, yeah, I'll do it, but only on one condition, because he loved Spinal Tap. He loved it. He said, only on one condition, I have to see that hat somewhere in the movie. I said, Mark, how can I? It takes place in days of yore. I mean, where's that hat going to be? And then I realized in the wraparound stuff with the grandfather talking to the grandson, I found a place and I put the hat on a lamp in the background. So if next time you watch it, you'll see.
Right. Well, and I guess I have to go back. Speaking of your character, I didn't realize that Marty DiBergi is a blend of famous directors.
Yes. I mean, everybody thinks it's Martin Scorsese, which to a large degree it is, because he was in, you know, if you saw the movie The Last Waltz, which is all about the band's last performance, it's a great documentary. But it was the first time I had seen a documentary where the documentarian put himself in the film. I mean, in The Kids Are All Right, or Song Remains the Same, or the Dylan, you know, D.A. Pennebaker, Don't Look Back. You don't see the documentary. But there's Marty Scorsese. He's in there, and he's questioning the band members. And I said, okay, maybe I'll put myself in the movie, and I'll question the band members. So when Scorsese first saw it, he thought, oh, that's not nice. He said, I never wore a baseball cap. Now he loves it. He loves it now. But what it was I took Marty DiBergi, and then the DI was Vittorio De Sica, who directed a movie called The Bicycle Thief, and then Berg was Bergman, you know, all the great, and the E is Fellini. So I try, you know, Marty DiBergi try to be like I'm a real filmmaker.
So great. I want to ask you another question. I went down the Rob Reiner filmography over the past few weeks, and I watched two movies, A Few Good Men and also The American President, in the last couple of days. Both are wonderful, and both appeal to just a wide swath of people. Could those two movies be made today? They both hold dear the rule of law and upholding. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but you watch you
could make a movie like that, but nobody's going to release it. No, I don't know. I mean, you know, we had an image of what we thought a president was about, which was honoring the rule of law and the Constitution and all that. And in the American President, I don't know how many of you heard that they took Jimmy Kimmel off the air. Did you? Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, it's really gotten to a very, very scary place in this country. And we're going to have to figure out how to dig ourselves out of this before it's too long. But we got to keep speaking out. Everybody has to keep speaking out. I saw Obama starting to speak out. People are starting to say, you know, that we can't have this. I mean, this is not the America. I just want to say, I'll get on the soapbox and then we'll get back. But I was just, you know, my wife her mother was in Auschwitz, and she lost her entire family there. She was the only survivor. My aunt was also in the camps. My uncle Charlie was at part of D-Day invasion, fought in 11 major battles, and my second father, Norman Lear, flew 52 bombing missions over Nazi Germany, and millions died, all to make sure that what's happening in this country now would never happen. And here it's 80 years later, and we're seeing it start to happen. So it's a very disturbing thing, and I hope we have the resilience to be able to weather this. And if we do, there's going to be a lot of repair work, because it takes 250 years to build something, and you can knock it down in a year. It's knocked down pretty easily. And, Benjamin Franklin said, after coming out of the convention, what do you have here? He said, well, a republic, if you can keep it. And it's only as good as we all agree that the rule of law means something and that the Constitution means something. And so we'll have to see if, it's an experiment. And we've been the longest living democracy ever. And we certainly haven't done everything right. We've done a lot of things wrong, but we go in fits and starts to move in the right direction. There was a time a woman couldn't vote. There was a time a black person couldn't vote. There was a time a black person couldn't marry a white person. There was a time where people of the same sex couldn't marry. We move forward. But this is the biggest step backward I've ever seen. And I'm hoping it's not too big a step backward that we can't bounce back and jump forward. But right now, I've never seen anything. I'm 78, and I'm sure there's people much younger than me, and maybe some of my age. I've never seen anything like this in this country. And, people are scared, and so hopefully we'll come back to a better time with a film like The American President, which, celebrates what presidency is all about and what a good president is about. I mean, we had two issues that we focused in on. One was gun control at the time, and one was the environment. These were issues that I cared about, the environment. Aaron Sorkin was interested in gun control, and we made those the two key issues of the film. And Clinton, during the second campaign, he comes out at one of the rallies, and he starts talking about a 20% reduction in fossil fuel emissions over the next 10 years. And his handler said, "What are you talking about? That's not. We haven't talked about that. He said, "But I saw this film, and it's a good idea. I like that idea." Yeah. So hopefully we'll get back to reasonable.
All right. There's no easy transition from that, but you are not. I just want to ask, on the family, you are often people, hey, meathead, but it also happens in other languages.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. It doesn't. I mean, I used to make the joke. I could, whatever. I could win the Nobel Prize. The headline would say, "Meathead wins Nobel." But one time I was down in Mexico, and I got the Teresa's. I got I was sick, and I was running to the bathroom, and I was really, really sick, and they said, "Well, we got to get you home." And I was so weak, I couldn't walk, so I'm in a wheelchair, and they're taking me through the airport. A guy who looks up and he goes, "Cabeza de carne." Yeah. There you go.
All right, one more question from me, and then we'll go to the audience. But it's maybe a dumb question, but you've got some comedians who are very, very straight-laced off-screen. When you get together with Michael, Harry, Christopher, are they funny? Are you funny? Is it joking around?
Yeah, we do joke. I mean, that's what's fun. When we started doing the sequel, we hadn't really worked together in a long time, and they hadn't played together in 15 years. And that became the basis of the sequel. That we came up with the idea that what was going on with their bad blood, Were they not speaking to each other? They hadn't played. But the minute we got into a room, the four of us, we started doing shtick with each other. We started playing around and bouncing back and forth. And like I said, great jazz musicians, they fall right back in. They know when to come in, when to lay out. And it's like, I don't know, have you ever seen a really good friend? You haven't seen them in a long time. And then you see them, you pick right back up where you left off. You know that person. So it was always comfortable in the way we did it.
Love that. Love that. Well, we're going to take some questions from you all, what I missed.
Hey, how you doing? Saw the movie yesterday.
Put some lights.
You don't want to see me.
Put a little light in the house. A little light in the house.
No,
and I can see. Yeah.
You'll regret it. Saw the movie Spinal Tap 2 yesterday. It was great.
Oh, great. Thanks. Thanks.
I was just wondering, Tony Hindra, with all his experience with National Lampoon and everything, did he help out beyond his character, or was it just limited to his character in the original movie?
Well, no. I mean, the whole thing is all the actors improvised. Every actor that you see in the film, the first one and the second one, they're all improvising. So he's bringing his skills to the character. I mean, he wasn't part of the original planning of the movie. I mean, we mapped out a vague, outline, but all the dialogue was improvised. So he was, when we hired him, we knew, because he would be that perfect British, bully kind of manager. He could play it great, and he brought what he brought to the party. Put lights on the house. You can do it. I'm telling you, it won't bother you.
Rob, over here.
Yeah, I don't know where you are. I can't see anything. Put the lights on the house. Go ahead. You're allowed. You're allowed.
Listen to the director.
Yeah. Turn it up.
He knows how to put on a good show. Listen to him.
Turn it up. Put on the lights, and you can see everybody. I can't see anybody. Go ahead.
Rob, over here.
I don't know where you are.
Right here, over here.
Sir.
Oh, there you are.
Your films mean the world to me. Your father's films mean.
Oh, thank you.
I can't wait to introduce my little boy to the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I am a huge Princess Bride guy. And one thing that I just wanted to ask you, if you had any kind of an anecdote about it. I know that Billy Crystal was trying to get a sequel made with Andre the Giant. And I believe that sort of material is, I know Andre passed, but
yeah, he did a movie called My Giant.
Is there any kind of connection to Princess Bride from that?
Yes, he always wanted to do, because Andre died when he was like 46, and he said one time to Billy, he said, Bill, big people, the little people, we don't live so long, and he was talking about that. So Billy always wanted to do that, but Andre was a great guy. I mean, he was a really great guy, very sweet and very smart. He talked about, that he would, who was that used to walk him home from school? Beckett, yeah, Samuel Beckett, who wrote, Waiting for Godot. How did you know that? That's true. And so he always was, really smart and everything, but he also was a prankster. He loved to play pranks. So one day we're up in Sheffield and we're making the movie, and 2:00 in the morning, the fire alarm goes off in the hotel, and everybody runs out into the street. And there we are, all in our underwear. There's a Giant, there's Wally Shawn, there's Robin Wright. We're all standing around, and he just screwed up. He pulled the thing and made it go. He just wanted to see everybody out on the street. And then he used to drink. He drank a lot, but it didn't. One day he comes to where I said, Andre, what'd you do last night? He says, went to the bar. Boss had a couple of drinks. I said, what do you drink? He says, I don't know. I had 6 bottles of wine, 3 bottles of cognac. I said, were you drunk? He said, no, I don't get drunk. A little tipsy, but I don't get drunk. So now we're going to shoot this scene where we actually shot it and we didn't use it, where they finish reading the book and the little boy picks up the book after Peter Falk leaves and he starts leafing through it, and he looks out the window and there the 4 heroes on the 4 white horses suspended in the sky. So now we're going to shoot the scene with the 4 on the horses, And it was the day that the Nouveau Beaujolais came out. And I'm not exaggerating. Andre drank 20 bottles of Beaujolais during the course of the day. So now at 8 o'clock at night, I'm coming down in Shepperton Studios, and I'm going to test this thing that we're going to have the four on the horses. And they open this door to the sound stage, and it's a little misty rain. And the three of them are sitting there, and Andre weighed like 500 pounds, so they couldn't put him on a horse. They had to lower him with guy wires and just rest him on the horse. So I walk up there, and I see this drunken giant being lowered from the ceiling. Hello, boss, like this. And I go, what do I do for a living? What is my job here? Anyway, that was Andre, but he's a great guy. Great guy.
Before I get to my question, I just want to thank you for making two of the best Stephen King adaptations, Misery and Stand By Me.
Thank you.
The best. But this is Spinal Tap. So, at what point do the four of you realize that your directorial debut movie has become a cult classic? Was it the video store success? Was it rock and roll musicians, word of mouth? Where were you like when you realized this was cult status?
It was a slow moving thing. I mean, if it was just the theater, we probably wouldn't have. We didn't do that great in the theaters. But when the videos and then the DVDs came out, people started picking up. And then when we started getting approached by rock musicians, and that made it work. I mean, Steven Tyler didn't love it so much, and Axl Rose, they thought, hey, they're making fun of us. We're doing important work here. That shouldn't be doing that. But at first, I was doing actually Princess Bride, and that was in 85, I think, 85. And Sting, I met Sting for the first time, and he said to me, boy, I've seen that movie so many times. Every time I watch it, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. So we kind of knew that we were kind of making inroads at that point. But it took years.
Hi there.
Can't see.
I know there's probably a million memories of you and your dad and Mel Brooks. Can you just share maybe one story? I would love to have been a fly on the wall hearing your dad and Mel Brooks getting together. Is there one story you can share?
Well, listen, the funniest people in the world were at my house. I mean, Mel Brooks and Sid Caesar and Neil Simon and all these people. And people always said, well, what is it like growing up, and that. And you don't know. I mean, you're a kid. You think that's what's at everybody's house, But then I went over to my friend Paul Schindler's house, and it just wasn't funny over there. But this is a story that my dad and Mel tells about what I was 4 years old. My sister was 2 years old, and we rented a house. The family rented a house on Fire Island, and they were inviting Mel, who was a young guy in his 20s, to come stay for the weekend. And so before we went to sleep, my dad says to me and my sister Annie says, he didn't want us to wake up in the morning and be scared to see, there was like a day bed, in the window, and he didn't want us to be scared. There was a man, he said, look, when you get up in the morning, there's going to be a man. A man is going to be sleeping there, and I just want you to know that ahead of time, there's going to be a man there. And I said, so now my sister and I wake up, and this is what Mel Brooks hears. He's dead asleep, and the two of us looking at him like this. Is that the man? Yeah, I think that's the man. That's the man, isn't it? Yeah, that's the man. Are you the man? And he wakes up, see these kids. Are you the man? It was the man, yeah.
We not only lost Tony Hendra, but we lost David Kopp, who played Viv Savage. I was wondering if you could give us a couple of stories about Viv. He had only a few scenes, but they were really fun. When he was on screen, he kind
one of the great lines, which is, I asked him what his philosophy of life was, and he says, have good time all the
I was just curious, was there sort of a reason, because when he died in July, or we
Yeah,
didn't hear much from the band or the cast?
Well, I took out some stuff on social media. I'm not like Mr. Social Media, but we did. I mean, we missed him. He was the sweetest guy in the world, and he took the place of John Sinclair because John was off, doing what he did. No, he was a really sweet guy, but he's not an actor. Nor was the guy who played the drummer. He wasn't the Rick Parnell. He wasn't an actor either. But they, so you use him sparingly. But he did great. He says, I love this computer magic when he's playing those very early video games.
Hello.
Hello.
I want to, first of all, thank you for making When Harry Met Sally. It's one of my favorite movies. Yeah. It's like one of the best movies of all time, and
thank you.
Sit down friends and make them watch it with me. Shout out to you and Nora Ephron, rest in peace. Okay, so I love asking this question because I feel like it's a great personality gauge, and because you just had a Beatle in your movie. Who is your favorite Beatle and why? For the record, mine is Paul. I've always been a Paul girl.
Well, that was my sister's favorite was Paul. I was always, I've come to appreciate Paul more than I ever did when the Beatles were, starting out. I was always a John fan. I always thought John, but as time has gone by, and I look at some of the changes and musical changes that Paul did, it's pretty amazing what he's been able to do. But I always liked John was always the one I liked at the time when I was a kid. Now that I'm a little bit further down, but John still wrote my favorite of all this. I mean, it wasn't a Beatles song, but Imagine to me, which is an incredible song.
I had the opportunity to see Spinal Tap in Orlando. Me and two people rushed the stage. We were the only ones. I have a guitar pick from Nigel.
Oh, okay.
This is amazing. Thank you for this.
Oh, thank you. Good.
I think you all want to know, when will we see the director's cut of Spinal Tap with everything you just talked about? Because I would pay good money for that.
Well, the Criterion Collection just came out with a new version of the first, and I think there's a lot of stuff. I mean, they've had Blu-rays and what was that first thing that they used to make? Laserdisc. They've had extras, and I think they put a few more extras in this one. But that's, if you want to see some of the things we talked about, they're in those things.
There's a funny, in the book you talk about how when you're making the sequel and doing the book and everything, with Star Wars, there's a team of people that is looking at the canon of Star Wars. We don't want to go against it. Whereas with Spinal Tap, it's all in the closet at Michael McKeon's.
Yes. Yeah. In a shoebox. Yeah. In a shoebox. Yeah. I know. We didn't have as sophisticated a tracking device.
I was blessed to see Spinal Tap in '92 in Chicago. It was amazing. Also saw the unplugged version when they were at Chicago Theater, right? Probably up 2002, I believe. When the tour, quote unquote, started, what was your involvement? I think I'm dovetailing to what he asked before. What was your involvement? Did you have any influence on that, or was it just
no? Because
do it.
No, the only time I worked with them was we did a concert in London for Live Earth. There was an environmental, and it was at Wembley Stadium. And Ricky Gervais introduced me as Marty, and I came out and I introduced the band. But other than that, no, these guys have done their own tours. They've been on tours, and I helped write the lyrics, for some of the songs, but I'm not a musician like them. No, they did their own tours. Oh, there you are.
Hi there.
Public radio nerd. It
That
says.
is me. Thank you. WBEZ. Free speech. You are absolutely legendary. You have worked with so many amazing artists, directors, actors, writers, producers in your career, is there anyone that you haven't had a chance to work with that would be like your dream project, or someone that you just wish, whether they're living or have passed, that you just wish you had a chance to work with or could?
Well, I've worked with a lot of people. I mean, I didn't get to direct Meryl Streep. I acted in a movie with her, but I always liked Kate Blanchett. I always thought she was an interesting actress. But I've seen a lot of people, young people. I mean, that Jeremy Allen White, who is in The Bear, he's great, and Timothy Chalamet is great. There are a lot of great young actors coming out. But I was lucky to work with Jack Nicholson a couple of times and Morgan Freeman a couple of times, and I've been lucky to work with some of the best actors in the world.
You've been blessed.
Yeah.
All right, everyone.
Oh, thank you.
Rob Reiner.
Thank you. Thank you.